How are you, Sam?
Good, thanks. And you?
Oh, very well, thank you. How's your day going?
Yeah, not too bad. Another brilliant day here on the southeast of Queensland. So yeah,
Oh, yeah. Actually, our day in Sydney today isn't bad.
hmm.
Not as hot as yesterday, but still quite warm. Still coming into summer, right? It's all good.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, look, thank you for your time today. It's been great to catch up with you. And thank you very much for joining us. One of the things we ask our wonderful guests is how did you become, tell us about your journey into the sector. What What led you to here?
sure. Yeah, it was a little bit, through my personal networks, really.
Oh, wow.
Got me sort of into the sector. Over about 12 years ago, a friend of mine who had started up a childcare centre group here on the Gold Coast had got the accreditation for an RTO licence with the state government, or got the ASQA accreditation, and had funding contract from the state of Queensland. And he was pretty busy with running his childcare centres. And the RTO, his ambition for the RTO was to build a better training experience for his staff. And we were, on holidays together, and he got in my ear about joining the RTO, and I said, well, I'm really qualified to do that. Firstly, I don't know what RTO stands for, and in terms of childcare, I've got three children, so that's the extent of my pedagogical knowledge there. But he sort of I bought
It's
in
got to
his
start
vision.
somewhere, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And then it was a wonderful experience from then on in training and early learning.
Yeah, look, it's a great sector. It's a critical sector for a whole raft of reasons, as we all know. And it's been a huge learning journey for me. But I've been doing it now for 11 years, and I often say I've probably walked into more childcare centres in Australia in the last 10, 11 years than anyone. So I'm pretty well versed to talk about what I've seen, I'm very excited about what the future holds in terms of our operations here as a registered training organisation.
Yeah, and really, that's where the future lies, isn't it? In training and getting educators on board in a great way, right? That's the retention is the issue, as we all know.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but if we can do that well at the beginning and set them up well through organisations like KKTC,
Yes.
I think we're halfway there of
Yeah.
keeping.
Yeah, it's really about the journey that a new entrant takes, and they're sitting at home at the moment, and they're thinking about getting back into the workforce if they're returning work, as a mum or a parent, and or maybe they're a school leaver, or they might be a sea changer, or perhaps they're semi-term unemployed, and they're wanting local work, they're wanting rewarding work. And working as an educator, I don't think there's anything more joyful and rewarding. So it's really about connecting, those personas or those individuals with a quality training provider, and that's who we are. And so
Yeah.
we start them on that journey, and we work with all the biggest groups in Australia now, and we're operating across Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia, and we
Wow.
have an amazing program. So
That's
yeah.
couple of states left and you're covered.
Well, that's right. It's a long flight to WA, so I'm not sure about that. But yeah, we've progressively sort of stretched our footprint, and now we operate in those states.
Wow, no, that's fantastic. Look, and I know when we first discussed this episode, we spoke about student experience and student success. Can you share how important they are and what it means to you about those two particular statements?
So experience is, you want to make, I mean, first impressions count. So you want to make the experience of enrolling in any course, whether it's with us doing a Cert 3 in early childhood education and care, or doing a diploma in horticulture or whatever. You want to make sure that experience and that onboarding is a positive one. You're dealing with people who are excited and apprehensive at the same time about getting into a new field potentially.
Yes.
For our students, and thinking back to sort of those personas I mentioned earlier, return to work mums, school leavers, sea changers, semi-term unemployed, about 95% female. For many, it's the first time in doing higher education. For many, it's the first time in the workforce. And so there's a lot of apprehension and anxiety that goes with that. So we want to make sure that we're giving a lot of virtual hugs in that initial phase, and we're making it very clear what the process is to get them enrolled, and then we want to support them very quickly in inducting them and setting the roadmap up if they're a trainee, obviously with their training plans, or if they're self-funded, make it very clear about what the process will be with training. And we have high levels of contact and a great model and a lot of other things I can probably share with you as we go forward with the discussion that
I'd love to hear.
Makes that experience a really positive one.
Because I know some of our audience will be people who may not be in the sector yet, or maybe thinking of doing higher education or wanting to do more. So, so it's about getting that over that fear as well, and knowing that there are people to support you. And it's not always been about perfect either, is it? Education and higher education is actually about pushing yourself to having some failings, having some good experiences, and coming out the end with that knowledge and experience and wisdom, for want of a better word.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I originally from Melbourne, and I've got all sorts of memorable quotes from back playing sport and watching old videos. And I remember there was a famous coach who used to say, "Don't think, do." There's Yoda from Star Wars. There is no try, only do. And my sort of catchphrase is, say yes and work out how. So really, it's about pushing yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, and making that decision to say, I'm going to change the trajectory of my career, my occupation. And for all the new entrants that I speak with, and I've literally spoken to thousands over the last 10, 11 years, it's about giving them confidence that this is a great sector. This is a very rewarding field of work, and it's unique. Every day is different. The smiles you see on the faces of the children, notwithstanding, it's a challenging work environment as well, obviously, but the rewards that you get from it, far outweigh any of the negatives.
Well, look, effectively, all our wonderful educators are really bringing into the next generation of children in being a fantastic member of our society, being confident in exactly what we've been talking about, doing that higher education, getting through school. The examples and the role modelling and the level of knowledge and experience an educator has can impact not one child, but that one child extrapolates out to thousands of children.
Absolutely.
So getting it right is really important. And if we get it wrong, what happens?
Well, I think if you get it wrong, that's the core of our operations. We aim not to get it wrong, and that is by making sure that we're making it really, really clear what the pathway is and what the opportunities are in the sector in terms of job and career growth. And so, in my view, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but it wouldn't matter whether you're in, the early childhood sector, or if you're in, farming, or, some other business areas, whatever it is, everything starts with training. So you've got to get the training right. And for us, we know that we provide a high quality training offering. And so hopefully, and I also demystify for new entrants, if I'm talking to them, and so with my team, we demystify what the reality of working in a childcare setting environment is like. It is a challenging work environment. It's a rewarding work environment, as I mentioned. But if you've and when I'm running, webinars and things, I'm saying, ask that core question, the why. Why do you want to do this? And thinking really deep within your soul that this is because, I love children, I want to make a difference, I want localized work, I want that stimulating environment, et cetera, et cetera. And if you've ticked the box across those areas, then take that, say yes and work out how. Take that opportunity to enroll. We'll start you on that program, and then hopefully you love the role, you love the opportunity, and you progress with your career from an entry-level educator into sort of senior educators, maybe educational leaders, into assistant managers, into centre managers, into teachers, and you can go on from the Cert 3 to the diploma, and with us, with articulations, to go on and do teaching degrees at university. So see the pathway starting with a Cert 3 entry-level, diploma, and then going on to university. And once you're in a university, you can niche off into a whole raft of fields that might really stimulate your interest as you're learning on the job. And then suddenly you become a specialist in an area, and you can have a very successful career.
And it's all those, also then you may not necessarily stay in that centre or those centres or wherever you're doing. You may actually push out, like you were saying, and end up becoming those mentors or those consultants or researchers, whatever it is that then supports those next level educators and managers coming through the sector, which is also very much needed.
Yeah, yeah, and I hear it a lot from, I do a lot of interviews for trainers and assessors. We're growing, pretty rapidly, and I've been just this week. I've probably had 4 or 5 interviews, and often the candidates that I'm speaking to come in to become trainers and assessors have been in the sector as centre managers, ed leaders, area managers for 10, 15 years, and they've almost, got to that level where they're wanting to give back but mentor adults. And so that's the great, again, another little niche opportunity as an educator to go on and then give back and share your wisdom and mentor the future generation of educators by becoming a trainer and assessor.
Absolutely. And that's so, the whole thing in our society is so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
Unfortunately, there's a real shortfall of educators. There was a report that just came out from the Commissioner of Job Skills Australia, and there's a 20,000 shortfall of educators in the sector, and it's not being sort of eroded because of some of the issues that we sort of just touched on. Things like retention and obviously whole I suppose an employee market with people shifting off and doing other things in their career choices. But I think you won't get a more rewarding career, as we said, than being an educator.
Yeah. Now, look, can I ask you, I'm an educator and I'm thinking about coming to KKTC to do some training, but I've got to work as well. Do I go and work in a centre? Do I come and do the course? Is it full time? Do I work to what I can do? Yeah. What's some of the great things and what's some of the pitfalls, I suppose, of the cost of living, right? I don't know of anyone that doesn't work these days.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of things in this. Firstly, the Productivity Commission is well documented that with the demands for 2 working parents in families and getting more women into the workforce and the macro issues of interest rates and cost of living and all the rest of it, that it is a requirement in many cases to have 2 working parents, and by association, when you've got the mum in the main returning to work, then childcare becomes an essential requirement, and by association, that's why you see so many childcare centres opening up. We've got obviously a growing population, and when you have more childcare centres opening up with the ratios, you're going to have more educators, and by association, you're going to have more training. So so we're very well placed to support I suppose that growth and that focus of getting more educators into the system
and supporting them so that they can work and they can do things. And do they do placements and things like that through the
Yeah, correct. So there's a few options, and often when I'm talking with a prospective student, they might be working in another sector. They might be, we've had it over the journey. It's interesting, a lot of hospitality workers, and it's a great thing when you're in your early 20s to go and work at bars and pubs and things like that. But it does get a bit tiring as you sort of get a little bit older and the night shifts and everything else. And there's that core sort of draw to children, and I hear it all the time. I just love children. I love looking after my nieces and nephews, and so I've had enough of working in whatever industry it might be, but I still have to, pay the rent. So you can mix and match if you've got, we're very much horses for courses. We'll talk through and see what's that potential student doing with their life at the moment. Can we fit in the training with an existing occupation? And yes, you can. So within the Cert 3, you've got 160 hours on the job. And so we can structure that at 1 day a week over the duration of the training. So you might be doing, you might be doing, I was just talking to somebody the other day, she's got a 5-day week. I said, would you be able to talk to your manager and say, look, I want to drop back to 4 days? Oh, yeah, I could do that. Okay, well, we could then support you 1 day a week at that long daycare centre. We'll visit you at that centre every 3 to 4 weeks for on-the-job training. We don't have domestic classes, so it's very much in the field, on the job. All the theory of every unit in the 17-unit Cert 3 is delivered through our learning management system. So you watch the YouTube videos, you download the guides, you read the materials, and you hand in your assessments. And then we also assess you in the workplace. So, for example, you might have handed in a assessment on how to prepare meals in a hygienic manner for children, or how to administer medication, and your trainer says, says, yep, Paula, you understand the theory. When I come out into centre next week, show me in practice what that looks like, and then we'll have competency conversations. And that's how effectively you get a pass mark or a competency for that unit, theory plus the prac. And we can fit that in with other priorities that the future student might have. But having said that, 20,000 shortfall of workers, what we find is when we place a student into a centre, and that's unpaid work experience as part of the training, end of day one, if they've presented themselves well and they're enthusiastic, invariably the centre says, oh, would you like to come and do some paid hours for us? So that's the opportunity to go straight into employment.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, can I ask you, and I know there's been a lot of discussion around placements and unpaid placements, and the government has changed some of the placements and being paid. Is early learning part of that?
No.
No. What a shame.
No. There might be in some states. I think in Victoria, we don't have a huge presence in Victoria. There might be some special funds and things like that. But generally, as I understand it, that's more for teachers.
Right. That's what I was thinking. It was the teachers and the placements. So I thought, I assumed, which is probably not very good, is that it might have applied to our early childhood educators as well.
I mean, we'd welcome that initiative.
Yeah.
I think strategically, there's been a lot of commentary, and there's been some legislative change. There's been some, mandated pay increases and things like that the government's introduced. There was sort of hardwired into the last budget federally, and there's a program of paying educators more, which is a good starting point. But I think things like vocational placement, unpaid work experience, if you were to support educators with some paid work experience, that would be a good initiative. But there's a whole raft of other components that I think would make becoming an educator more attractive as a package that can be considered.
Yeah. And look, and I suppose it's really doing podcasts like this and getting that out there where people say, hey, look, we need to push federally or with states to get that funding for placements. So hopefully we've got someone really keen to take that up for us and push that through as well, because we've done really well in a lot of space with salaries and awards. But I think, like you said, with the fact that there's that shortfall of 20,000, that's not an easy thing to fix overnight.
Well, the thing is, where do you get that population of educators from? There has to be. I mean, obviously, we need to retain who's in there to start with, and that's and I should say that we work with a number of centres, very high quality centres that have got great organisational structures. They pay above award. They've got great incentives for working mums, subsidies for children, within their own centres for the mums. They've got extra, what I call employer of choice initiatives. And
yes,
I follow or are connected with the majority of them on LinkedIn, and I love seeing the little videos of the educators getting together and celebrating, what a great sector it is, and those quality centres that are investing in their people. I mean, everything starts with, the culture and the values within those organisations, and the really good centres that do it very well. I don't see that they have as many challenges with retention as some of the ones that necessarily don't. Just this weekend, there's the Australian Childcare Alliance New South Wales Gala event, and they're celebrating the successes of the sector. And there's a lot of great centres that win awards, and I go every year to that event and hand out an award. And some of the centres that you see that win those awards, they win them not by chance. It's because they invest in their people and they have high retention rates and things of that nature. But the new entrants, the 20,000 shortfall, there's got to be extra incentives and extra positioning of the importance and the brand value of becoming an educator. And it's not just being a carer and that sort of old traditional sort of thought process. Becoming an educator and stepping through the pathway of higher education, starting with a Cert 3 and going on, as we talked about. And I think, again, the Skills Council that we're talking about, by 2050 having 80% of tertiary qualified, people in the community. I mean, that's a pretty ambitious sort of target. But for us, I always encourage the educators, whether they're school-based with us starting or just a return to worker or a sea change or whoever it is to see this as a stepping stone, Cert 3 diploma, and then on to tertiary. And as you know, Paul, education is a lifelong journey, right? So,
you never stop learning.
Yeah, correct.
No, and I actually the quote you said earlier about Yoda. There's no such thing as try, you just do.
Yeah.
I remember that, and I actually instilled that into my children. Don't
Yes.
say you're going to try, just do it.
Yeah. You've got to be
I can
consistent.
try to fly to the moon. That's what was I could try to fly to the moon, but it's not going to work, right? But
Mm.
if I want to do that, I've got to put
Yeah.
effort into it and become an astronaut.
Yes. True.
So no, it's quite yeah, no, I love that motto, and that's really what it's about. Just step out there, have a go, and reach out to you at KKTC for some support around what they need to do. And of course, it's such a fantastic sector. I love it. I've been in it for 15 years myself, so I love it. I love it.
Mm.
Now, we've sort of talked about lots of different things, and I know part of it is the setting it up for success and those positive results. We've talked about the employer, the employer of choice benefits, the 1 day a week, the paid work that may come out of that. Is there anything else that we could do to set that up for success and get those really positive results?
Well, from a parochial position, I think a lot of it starts with the quality of the training organisation. I've just literally come from downstairs. We've got 60 international students here today, and I interviewed a number of them last week for a video that we're going to publish on our YouTube page in the next couple of weeks. And just hearing their stories from Ecuador and Chile and Brazil and Colombia, and we're very fortunate to live. And I think again I'm a bit biased, but I think I live in the best part of Australia, which is the Gold Coast. But we're very fortunate to live in a brilliant country that gives you so many opportunities. And so really, it's about promoting the brand of being an educator. I think it's connecting and having a bit more strategy in terms of school-based traineeships and increasing awareness of the important roles of educators at that sort of year 10, year 11 level. We've had enormous success with school-based traineeships, but some schools do it better than others in terms of how they promote and how they market to the families about becoming an educator. And so I think that's a starting point. I think for the adult learners, it really is about pay rates, the brand of becoming an educator, educating those new entrants about the pathways and the job opportunities, and the rewarding, side of being an educator. So, and there's been work don't be wrong. There's been work that's been done on this
Yeah.
at various levels, and you'd be familiar with some of the programs. But I think we just need to do more of that. When I
Yeah.
think about internationals, it's an interesting one. So, as I said, we've got about 60 students here today. And they come over on student visas. Some of them, may, if they're wanting to stay in Australia, there may be ways that they can stay in Australia. If they partner up with somebody, that's always a good way. And at this point in time, there isn't a pathway to residency that is clearly articulated, through doing a Cert 3 or a diploma. They'll go back to their, to their countries of origin, but they learn so much while they're here. I think that the international market is a market that strategically we should be looking at more so to again, how are we going to get to that 20,000? And every single international student that I've had engagement with through this college have all been very hard workers. The centres have loved their commitment to their roles, etc. And many of them would be
Love,
here in a heartbeat if they could be.
yeah, and love to stay. And of course, we need them.
Correct.
Yeah, so we definitely have a need, and it's now that next level of, getting those visas and that sponsorship or that, and of course, if we've got any approved providers listening, they should contact you, Sam, to see if they can access those international students on placements and things. Is that right?
Yeah, we place hundreds of students. Our phone runs hot every day from not only internationals but certainly a lot of domestic students right across those states I mentioned before. And often, if they're working, as I said before, if they're working in another role and they just want to start at that 1 day a week level, we'll place them in a centre close to their home, and then we start them on their training from there. And so we're a little bit of a hidden recruitment arm, I suppose, for some of those centres. And we place students in, and often, as I said before, they'll get picked up in early days in their vocational placement. They become, great employees.
No, that's fantastic. It's such a it's amazing when you look outside a centre what support we can give and what support we provide to those. And sometimes, like I do hear from educators in centres that they often don't know what's out there either. They don't know. And so, getting this out to that wider audience and having them listen from people like you, Sam, to be able to say, hey, come and talk to us, it actually gives them that confidence as well that there is more than the centre, that there is more to do and more training as well. So I appreciate you sharing all of this. Now, can I ask you, and I know we've talked about retention and things like that, so what do you feel are the big topics for the sector looking forward sort of 2 to 5 years? And I think we touched on it, but, you know, you may have another idea, open to whatever you'd like to share.
Well, look, I mean, you know, there's two things. There's new entrants and then there's retention and growth. And as I mentioned, I think the centres that where they've evolved and it's not just about the aesthetics of a centre. You know, there's a whole raft of centres. I was talking to somebody just the other day, actually has applied for a role with us, and she's been a senior educator at a community-based centre, and she was telling me giving me insights about that centre. And my own children went to a community-based centre, and I remember going along, and you know, just the quality, not so much that they don't have the shiny lights that some of the newer centres have, but just the depth of quality in practice, and you know, the care factor and everything else that goes with the educators, and you know, not being for profit, all the investment going back into the educators and so forth. So I think retention of staff is an important one. We do see churn. I think there's a training equation in that. Not surprisingly, I think unfortunately, if providers or, you know, long day care centres, childcare centres don't make the right choice in the registered training organisation they're going to choose, then that can be a really bumpy road for that initial new entrant. Within 3 months, that educator is probably going to churn out of the sector if he or she is not being supported with their training. That's the reality. Very few centres actually see the correlation between that. They do when I've had a chat with them, because I enlighten them about the importance of training. But choosing the RTO is to me, is business critical. You know, I'm sure, you know, McDonald's or some of the best retail brands in the world, they don't take chances with training. They don't let anyone come in and do their training unless they've done their due diligence and they've got the right, you know, qualities and everything else. So getting that new entrants, making sure that journey from new entrant, and you think about it, you know, it might be a school leaver, it might be somebody that, as I said before, that's got some anxiety, is concerned about starting work and all that sort of stuff. So you want to nurture them. And some of the centres are better at that onboarding, that induction, the clarity of task and direction, the policies and procedures that they follow. Not the, you know, the compliance policies and procedures, but almost like the cultural procedures. You know, what are the values and behaviours? And I see this as a sensory perception when I walk into a centre. You know, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? And a lot of it comes from the leader of the organisation. That's the centre manager. And so the centre manager, you know, will be the one that sets the standards. And if I see, you know, positive, engaged, happy educators, then I know it's a very well-run centre. I can walk into a centre manager's office and I can almost make an instant determination about how well-run it is. And I'm very big on paperless offices. But so quality of leadership is critically important. Centres that care for their staff and have the right, you know, programs in place in terms of professional development, in terms of obviously, you know, remuneration, other, you know, I mentioned before about, you know, childcare things of that nature. So that's really important in terms of that retention piece. And then investing in those educators and their growth and their career development.
Because that investment really keeps the retention, right? And if you lose to retention, lose an educator, the cost to do that all over again is far outweighs what you could do with an educator that's there and growing for you and you know, being in your centre and advocating for the children and for you. It's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know,
it's
not rocket science, but, you know, care for your staff, invest in them. It's all about, you know, as a leader, it's all about them. And I suppose I've just been around a while now, and I see different levels of focus in terms of leadership across multiple industries. But in this sector, I think it's there's certainly a gap there. And it's one of the things that we're now offering, and it wasn't a segue back into that, but it's another one of the sort of value-adding services that we offer is leadership and management PD. And we've built a series of units that sit within our platform, and we're offering that to centres at no cost that use us for the core business of our training. Because every centre, I think every centre manager can benefit as you and I can.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm always reading leadership, books and podcasts and all that sort of
Oh,
thing.
yeah, and look, and I know you mentioned LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn fan,
Mm.
and the information and the things on there that can just help you learn things, and the from the sector, it's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
No, we're doing a strategy session in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and our chief operating officer sent me a journal today from Harvard, and it went through and it listed, modern day leaders and the sort of characteristics and the investment that they need to be making in the development of their teams, and that's what leadership is all about. And I read through it and I shared it with our executive team, and I said, tell me the areas that you feel that we're not meeting this sort of standard at this point in time, because when I look at it, I'm very biased and I think, yep, we're doing that. And I think the challenge for the environment within centres is, don't get me wrong, centre managers the majority are brilliant in their pedagogical, sort of adherence to standards and the welfare of the children. And that's their core business, right? But
yeah,
and educating of the children. But it's then, I think, where we fall a bit short in some centres is how are they leading their teams, and particularly when we put new entrants into centres, if they're not on board and inducted in a really positive manner, they end up maybe in a room that isn't the most positive workplace, and for many, is this the norm? This is this the norm? And
this is what I do. This is just how it is,
and it shouldn't be like that.
And also, just if there's no sort of that, like I said, that leadership where they feel comfortable to come and say, hey, look, this is not working for me, or can we try this? Because it's about, teamwork. Leadership is actually about not really telling them what to do. It's about actually getting the best out of your team, right? So it's about helping each of those individuals and giving them that confidence to come and say, this is what I think we should try. This is my idea. This is what I've read. This is what I've learned. Sharing of ideas and all of that. And it's any sector. It doesn't matter what you're in, what workforce you're in. If you've got a positive leader and a great leader, your staff are good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's your your responsibility as a leader. And I think certainly from my perspective as CEO, I do all the hiring. So I talk to candidates every single day. I think it's probably the most and obviously leading the team, but it's one of the more important things that I do is to make sure also that I'm hiring the right sort of alignment with our values and the right sort of I focus very heavily on the emotional intelligence of candidates that we bring in, because every candidate that I speak with from the sector has high credentials in the pedagogy and the frameworks and the childcare specifics. But I want to make sure that they're, particularly now that you're flipping their roles from being running a centre to now having to go out into centres, and sometimes be that sort of not cap in hand, but you've got to be conscious of the environment you're working in, and it's totally different to running a centre where you're in charge of 40, 50 staff, whatever it is. Now you're coming in and really trying to connect and managing up through educational leaders and centre managers and so forth. So that transition of skill set, and also coming into a culture with us, which is very much based on, I'm very big on candor, and what you talked about before is really important. And I hope that everyone within this organisation, they've got an idea, if they've got something that they want to get off their chest, that they'll feel very comfortable about talking about it with me or any of the leadership team here. That's not always the case, not specific to our sector, but in all organisations.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, it's. You and I have probably worked for a few organisations, and my experiences is good and bad and ugly. You're probably the same. So as you age and you grow through those places, you do learn what doesn't work and what does work as well. But education is key, right? Education and knowing there are places out there to support. If you're not in a place where you're happy or you're feeling you're getting good professional development, don't sit there. Reach out to organisations like KKTC. Yeah. Have a chat. See what you can do to help yourself, right? It's about, if someone's not helping you, then you can become the person to help you.
Yeah, I say this to my children, and my daughter's an educator, and I always say to her in life, if it's to be, it's up to me, and if you're not happy with something, make a change. It's an employee's market in this sector, right? So, there is a lot of really high quality centres out there, and if you feel that you're not, being supported, particularly in your professional development, your growth, and things like that, or maybe you've just got, difficult work environment, then you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, it's 20,000 are needed, so the advantage is there because at some point we will probably balance out in the next 10 years.
Yep.
Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed we do. But at the moment, that employees market is certainly a driver in better quality leadership, better quality, pay, all of that sort of thing that goes with it. Now, before we finish up, and I know you've already said a couple of your quotes, and I love that Yoda one. Is there any other personal motto or motivational quote that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, look, this is one that I roll out a fair bit to anyone who wants to listen, and that is just the standard we walk past is the standard we accept. So, we look at the brand experience of KKTC from pre-enrollment, onboarding, training, and completion. There's so many elements and connection points within that brand experience for a first-time entrant into the sector. And we want every single brand experience with that, whether it's the enrolment form we send out, the first call they make, the way they engage with our website, the way that first induction is done. And we want to make sure that every single experience is a positive one. And so I'm constantly challenging everyone in this operation to meet a standard of excellence, or as close to excellence as we can make it in terms of the students' engagement. At the end of the day, we only exist for our students. And so the standards that we set are critically important. And we're only, again, another little throwaway line, we're only strong as the weakest link. If we let one person or one process sort of fall down, that experience can be not as good as it could be. And if you look at go to kktc.com.au, you look at our reviews, what you'll see is just, exceptionally positive reviews. And I look at those every second day. I constantly monitor. We do NPS surveys. We do secret shoppers out to centres and different things to make sure that we're meeting those standards.
Those standards are done. That's fantastic, and that's I'm well and truly on board with you on that. I'm sure anyone listening could not argue or be thinking that doesn't work, because that really is what it's about. Whether you're in a training organisation like KKTC or in your centre, what's your brand about? What is it? What's that experience? And the standard you walk past is the standard you set, right? So that's so true, especially in this sector. Oh, Sam, look, thank you so much for your time. I love learning more about training and KKTC and the world out there for anyone who's considering becoming an educator in the early learning sector, and to reach out to you. And we'll share those details and things with the podcast and to our broader audience, and go from there, and hope to have a chat again one day.
Happy to, Paula, and thanks very much for the opportunity to have a chat. I've enjoyed it.
No, pleasure. Thank you, Sam.
Righty. Bye-bye.